We've got breaking news out of Major League Baseball where Scott Rolen is headed to the Hall of Fame. The seven-time All-Star finally getting the nod on his sixth opportunity on the ballot. Rolen played 17 years in the majors, splitting time with the Phillies, Cardinals, Reds, and Blue Jays. His 8 Gold Glove awards are fourth most by a third baseman in Major League Baseball history. Rolen will join the crime dog, Fred McGriff, in the class of 2023 in Cooperstown this summer. McGriff was voted on in December by the Contemporary Era Committee, unanimously, I might add. And we are joined now by former Florida Marlins president David Samson. And David, your team's played against Scott Rolen. What do you think about Rolen getting into the Hall of Fame?
When we played against him, we just knew that he was one of the players you don't want to let beat you. Forget the glove at third base, which was a simple vacuum cleaner. With him at the plate, you just knew you had a problem. And we would have pitchers designing attacks to try to not have him beat us, and it wouldn't work. Scott Rolen has gone through the process. It's important to understand how the Hall of Fame voting works. It's like a step process for those who aren't first ballot Hall of Famers, and you improve and increase over the years. And Scott Rolen made it by 5 votes. And you may ask, why do people change their vote from year to year? And it's a matter of whether or not the ballot is crowded. And the ballot has become a little less crowded this year, which gave a lot of movement to people like Scott Rolen and Todd Helton, who's only 11 votes away from making it into the Hall of Fame. So he is on schedule to get voted in. So all in all, this went according to schedule. Scott Rolen is well deserving, and seeing him and Fred McGriff go into the Hall of Fame together will be a good weekend in Cooperstown.
You know, you've seen so many players, being in the game, up front and up close and personal. Is there something about Rolen that just passes the eye test as something different than other great players out there?
I like when you ask about the eye test, because in this era of analytics, there's people who say that you shouldn't use the eye test. But the eye test is something that we use often, and we combined it with statistics and analytics. But I'll tell you, the eye test is when you look at a player and you realize that up and down the lineup, that he is going to hurt you. His ability to go to all fields, you could not pound him in. You could not go away because he had such great plate coverage. I don't want to underestimate to people what it was like to watch him play third base. Maybe there's 18 third basemen in the Hall of Fame. It's not common for those types of players to get in, but man, he was that good. And that full screen that you saw where his voting increased year after year after year, that is a path that happens often to players who eventually end up in the Hall of Fame, as opposed to players who plateau, like a Jeff Kent, who end up not making it in, and now he's off the ballot.
Yeah, you mentioned Jeff Kent. He's one of the players who falls off after not getting the 75% that you need to get from the baseball writers to get into the Hall of Fame. There's a long list of players waiting to see if they can get into the Hall of Fame. As you mentioned, though, the classes are getting smaller and smaller. Just one voted in by the baseball writers this year and last year. That was David Ortiz. None in 2021. On this list, you say Todd Helton trending towards getting into the Hall of Fame. What do you make of a guy like maybe like an Alex Rodriguez sitting there at 35.7%? Not much of an uptick from a year ago.
Yeah, I think it's clear. Let's look at this list and talk about A-Rod. When you see him at 35.7, up from 34.3, that is really showing that he's going to be like Clemens. He's going to be like Bonds. He'll get through 10 years. 10 years is the amount of years that you get on the ballot if you receive more than 5% of the vote. And after 10 years, if you don't have 75, like Jeff Kent in his 10th year, then you fall off the ballot. So A-Rod, I expect, will fall off the ballot, and then he will be thought about the way Clemens and Bonds were by the Veterans Committee, which has been renamed. But that's the only way he's going to get in. But when you look at that list, you talk about a Todd Helton, he's a year away. Billy Wagner, maybe next year, maybe the year after, but he is certainly trending to get in as well. But no one else on that list is getting in anytime soon. I know people were focused on Carlos Beltran. What impact would the 2017 sign-stealing, garbage can banging have on Carlos Beltran, who is acknowledged as a major part of that? Carlos Beltran, short of sign stealing, was still not a first ballot Hall of Famer. And the writers made it clear at 46.5%, he is on the path to the Hall of Fame, because how Carlos Beltran is treated will inform us about Jose Altuve, Alex Bregman, other players associated, even if they didn't participate, but on that 2017 team, which could have had a bunch of Hall of Famers, what will happen to them? We now see Beltran is on the way, starting at 46.5.
All right, we just went through the list of players who got enough votes to stay on the ballot and up towards the top 10 and trending in that way. Only one player in this year and one player in the year before and none the year before that. How many do you see and who do you see being in the class of 2024 off the list of maybe first-year eligible players next year? Anyone on this list you think a first ballot Hall of Famer?
I love that we do this, right? It's right after the NFL draft. We start doing the mock draft for the next year. We can't even let Scott Rowland even contemplate what it means to be in Cooperstown. We're ready for next year. These are all players who were part of my generation. And you look at this list, and the best chance is Adrian Beltre to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I'm not sure that he has what it takes to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, but don't forget that they need someone in every year. It's not good for business when no one goes into the Hall of Fame because it's such an important weekend for revenue for the Hall of Fame Museum. So when you look at this list, to me, Adrian Beltre sticks out. You've got to look at Bartolo Colon, who had a lot of length, a lot of volume in his career, and someone like a David Wright, who's not going to be a Hall of Famer. He's more like a Don Mattingly type, where injuries will stop him from being a Hall of Famer in what certainly was a trajectory that could have landed him in the Hall of Fame, but he'll end up falling short.
Man, we are right there, simpatico. When I saw the name David Wright, the first name that came to my mind was my favorite player as a kid, was Don Mattingly. And it's unfortunate because I'd love to see Mattingly in the Hall, just like Mets fans would love to see David Wright, and I don't think any of us are getting any of that. David Samson, former Florida Marlins president. David, thanks so much for the knowledge. Much appreciated. And you can check out David Samson every day on his podcast. It's Nothing Personal with David Samson. It's part of the CBS Sports Podcast family. You can check it out wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe and download today.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.